My husband forgot our anniversary, but he remembered hers.
How could my husband forget our anniversary, but remember someone else's? That question echoed through Camille's mind as she sat alone in the gentle amber glow of their apartment, the flickering candlelight casting restless shadows across the walls. The city's muffled heartbeat, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional burst of laughter from the street, filtered in through a cracked window, but inside, time seemed suspended. Camille's gaze lingered on the untouched dinner she'd carefully prepared. Seared salmon, roasted asparagus, a side of risotto. Their favorite meal, or at least it used to be. Now, the steam had long dissipated and the food sat cooling on porcelain plates, evidence of her anticipation slowly dissolving into disappointment. She checked her phone, thumb hovering anxiously over the screen. No missed calls, no new messages. The clock on the stove blinked a silent accusation. 8:47 p.m. Grant was never this late without letting her know. But tonight, there was only silence, broken sporadically by the buzz of a notification that wasn't for her. Camille's fingers fidgeted with the edge of her linen napkin, folding and unfolding it as she tried to steady her breathing. Each tiny sound from the hallway made her heart leap, only to drop again when footsteps passed by their door. Flashes of happier times darted through her mind, unbidden, but persistent. The first time she'd met Grant, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, laughing over overpriced lattes at a sidewalk cafe in Central Park. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle confidence in his voice. There had been picnics beneath cherry blossoms, spontaneous trips to Coney Island, slow walks through the city at dusk. She remembered moving into this very apartment together, Grant carrying her across the threshold in a moment of silly, movie-like romance. Their wedding day, all nerves and laughter and promises whispered beneath a rain-soaked gazebo. Every prior anniversary, Grant had found a way to surprise her. Handwritten notes tucked into her purse, impromptu tickets to jazz shows, once even a midnight boat ride on the Hudson. He'd always remembered, always made her feel seen. But tonight, all she felt was invisible. Her mind spiraled with questions. Was it work? Was he upset with her? Or worse, was there something, or someone, else? The thought made her stomach knot. She reached for her phone again, scrolling through their last few text exchanges. Grant had been brief, distracted. Running late, don't wait up. Big project tonight, sorry. Apologies, but no warmth. No hint of the man who once memorized her coffee order or left daisies on her desk for no reason at all. When the door finally creaked open, Camille startled. Grant stepped inside, his tie askew, hair tousled, eyes darting apologetically toward her. He carried the scent of rain and city grit with him, and for a moment, she wanted to believe it was all just a misunderstanding. He let out a weary sigh, dropped his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, and offered her a lopsided smile. Hey Cam, sorry I'm late. The Henderson account went into crisis mode and the team needed me to stay. I should have called. His voice was soft, but Camille picked up the tension beneath it. She forced a smile, gesturing to the dinner table. It's okay. I figured you'd be caught up at work. I kept things warm just in case. Her words sounded brittle, even to her own ears. Grant sat down, glancing at his phone as it buzzed on the table. Camille's eyes flickered to the screen, where a notification glowed. Reminder, Sophie's birthday. The name sent a wave of unease through her, unmooring her already fragile composure. Sophie. The name was familiar, too familiar. Grant had mentioned her often, his colleague at the agency, someone he admired for her creativity and sharp wit. Camille had met Sophie once at an office party, and while she'd found her charming, she'd also noticed the effortless rapport between her and Grant. The inside jokes. The way Sophie's hand lingered on Grant's arm during a story. At the time, Camille had brushed aside her discomfort, chalking it up to workplace camaraderie. Now, though, the memory took on a sharper edge. Their meal began in awkward silence, the clinking of cutlery and the soft hum of the city outside filling the void. Camille searched for something, anything, to bridge the distance, recalling how easily their conversations used to flow. She asked about his day, tried to make him laugh, but Grant's answers were clipped, distracted. His mind seemed miles away. When she mentioned their anniversary, his eyes widened in embarrassment. "Cam, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I forgot. Things have just been insane at work and—" She waved it off, not trusting herself to speak. The truth was, she wasn't angry that he'd forgotten the date. She was hurt that he'd forgotten her, that she'd become another item on a to-do list, an afterthought. Later, as she cleared the dishes, Grant retreated to the bedroom under the guise of answering work emails. Camille lingered in the kitchen, hands submerged in soapy water, staring blankly at the city lights beyond their window. She replayed the evening in her mind, scrutinizing every word, every glance, searching for some sign of hope. Instead, all she found was a growing sense of isolation. That night, Camille lay awake, staring at the ceiling as Grant's steady breathing filled the room. She turned over the memory of that notification, Sophie's birthday, like a stone in her pocket. Had he remembered Sophie's birthday because of a shared calendar? Or was there something more? Was she being paranoid? Or was her intuition warning her of a deeper rift? Her thoughts spun in endless circles. She remembered the way Grant used to look at her, really see her, as if she were the most important person in the world. Lately, though, she felt like a ghost in her own life, drifting through their routines without connection. She wondered if this was how love faded, not in dramatic explosions, but in subtle neglect, in the slow erosion of intimacy. Camille's phone buzzed with a late-night message from her best friend, Lila. "How'd it go? Did he surprise you?" She considered responding with the truth, but typed a simple, "He was late. Long day at work." Letting the lie settle between her and her friend, Camille felt the weight of her loneliness deepen. Even her most trusted confidant wouldn't understand the hollow ache that had settled in her chest. As the city fell silent outside, Camille turned toward Grant, watching him sleep. She tried to remember the last time he'd reached for her hand, the last time he'd laughed at her jokes, the last time she'd felt cherished. The memories seemed distant, faded at the edges. She closed her eyes, willing herself to sleep. But the question persisted. If Grant could remember Sophie's birthday, what else did he remember about her that he'd forgotten about Camille? She told herself she was being irrational. That work stress could explain everything. But a seed of doubt had been planted. And it grew with each passing hour. Tomorrow she would try to talk to Grant, try to bridge the widening gap between them. For tonight, all she could do was hold on to the hope that the man she'd married was still somewhere behind the silence, waiting to be found again. The apartment, once alive with laughter and shared secrets, now felt too big, too empty. As she drifted toward a restless sleep, Camille resolved not to let her fears define her, but to seek out the truth, whatever it might be. Morning sunlight crept through the gaps in the blinds, casting soft stripes across Camille's face. She woke with a dull ache in her chest, the remnants of restless dreams lingering as she blinked away the fog of sleep. The city hummed to life outside her window, honking horns, distant sirens, the muffled clatter of delivery trucks. But inside her apartment, a heavy stillness remained. Grant's side of the bed was empty and cold. He'd left before dawn, leaving only the faintest trace of his cologne on the pillow. Camille lingered a moment, tracing the outline of their wedding photo on the nightstand. A memory of better times, when their smiles came easily and the world felt simple. She pressed her lips together, steeling herself for the day ahead, and finally rose. Routine was her anchor. She showered, dressed in a soft blue blouse and black jeans, and pulled her hair into a loose ponytail. As she sipped her coffee, she scrolled through her phone, hoping for a message from Grant. There was nothing. She set the cup down, the ceramic clinking louder than usual in the quiet kitchen, and tried to shake off the sense of being forgotten. Her office was only a subway ride away, but the journey felt longer than usual. The train rattled beneath the city, fluorescent lights flickering overhead as commuters jostled for space. Camille watched her reflection in the glass, tired eyes, a forced smile, a woman trying to hold herself together. She wondered if anyone else could see the cracks. At the Manhattan design agency where she worked, the atmosphere was brisk and buzzing. Keyboards clicked, printers whirred, and the scent of takeout lunches mingled with expensive perfume. Lila, her closest friend and confidant at work, greeted Camille with her usual warm grin. Lila was the kind of woman who could make anyone laugh, with her quick wit and sparkling green eyes. "Hey, you look like you could use an extra shot in your latte," Lila teased, nudging her playfully as they settled into their adjoining desks. Camille managed a weak smile. "Rough night. Grant's been distant." Lila's expression softened. "Still about your anniversary?" Camille nodded, fiddling with her mouse. "He forgot. And it's not just that. I found a notification on his phone. Sophie's birthday. He remembered hers, not ours." A low whistle escaped Lila's lips. "Ouch. That's not great. But it's probably nothing, right? I mean, you know how guys are with work stuff." Camille wished she could believe that. "He's been spending more time at the office, always texting, always busy. I feel like I'm living with a stranger." Lila leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Have you talked to him?" "Like, really talked?" "I tried," Camille whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "He says he's just stressed about work, but he won't look me in the eye. It's like he's somewhere else." Lila squeezed her hand. "Don't let your imagination run wild, but don't ignore your feelings either. You deserve answers." The day moved in fits and starts, deadlines looming and clients calling for revisions. Camille forced herself to focus, channeling her anxiety into bold color schemes and sharp typography, but her mind kept drifting. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart leapt, only to sink again when it was just a calendar reminder or a group chat. Lunch hour brought little relief. She and Lila sat by the window, watching the world drift by 7 stories below. Lila talked about her latest dating escapade, trying to lift Camille's spirits, but the laughter felt hollow. Camille's thoughts circled back to Grant. Where was he right now? Was he really working? Or was he with Sophie? That evening, the question followed her home. The apartment was silent when she arrived. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the counter, Grant's, judging by the crusts he never finished. She spotted his jacket draped over a chair, his shoes neatly lined up by the door. Evidence that he was still living here, but somehow further away than ever. She reheated leftover pasta and ate alone at the kitchen island, phone propped up beside her. At 7, she texted Grant, "Let me know when you're on your way home." The message was marked as delivered, but went unanswered. The hours trickled by. Camille busied herself with chores, folding laundry, watering the potted fern by the window, and tidying up the clutter that had accumulated. She found herself frowning at the sight of Grant's notebooks. One of them open to a page filled with scribbled notes, and at the bottom, the unmistakable name, Sophie. Her stomach twisted, but she forced herself to breathe, to remember Lila's advice. Don't jump to conclusions. At nearly 10, Grant walked in, looking worn and distracted. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his tie was askew. "Hey," he said, dropping his bag by the door. Camille forced a gentle tone. "Long day?" He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Just a lot going on at the office. Sorry I'm late." She studied him, searching for the man she'd married beneath the exhaustion and distance. "I made dinner, but I figured you'd already eaten." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Yeah, I grabbed something with the team." She wanted to ask, was Sophie part of that team? But the words caught in her throat. Instead, she cleared her plate and retreated to the living room, curling up on the sofa with a book she couldn't focus on. Grant joined her eventually, turning on the TV and flipping through channels aimlessly. The space between them felt cavernous. The next day brought more of the same. Grant left early, Camille worked late, and their conversations were reduced to logistical exchanges. Who would pick up groceries, whether the rent check had cleared, if they needed more detergent. Each encounter felt rehearsed, stripped of the affection that once came so easily. But that Friday, their friend group gathered for dinner at a trendy restaurant in the East Village, a tradition that had persisted since their college days. Camille dressed carefully, choosing a red dress she knew Grant had always liked. She hoped it might spark something, might remind him of what they shared. As they arrived, the buzz of conversation and clinking glasses filled the air. The table was crowded with familiar faces, old friends swapping stories, laughter echoing off exposed brick walls. Sophie was there, sitting beside Grant, her brown hair pulled into a sleek bun, her silver earrings catching the light. "Camille!" Sophie greeted her with a warm smile, standing to hug her. "It's so good to see you." Camille managed to return the gesture, her heart pounding. "You too, Sophie." Throughout the meal, Camille watched the interplay between Grant and Sophie. He seemed lighter around her, his laughter quick and easy, his eyes lingering a moment too long on Sophie's animated gestures. Camille forced herself into conversations with the others, Bryce's new job, Marissa's wedding plans, but her attention never strayed far from Grant and Sophie. At one point, Lila caught Camille's eye from across the table, raising an eyebrow in silent question. Camille shook her head, trying to reassure her, but the knot in her stomach only tightened. As dessert was served, Grant and Sophie launched into an inside joke about a disastrous office meeting, mimicking their boss's mannerisms. The group erupted in laughter, but Camille felt invisible, as if she were watching the scene from behind glass. On the way home, the city was alive with neon signs and the distant wail of sirens. Camille walked a step behind Grant, arms crossed against the cool night air. "Did you have a good time?" she ventured. "Yeah," he replied, glancing at his phone. "It was nice to catch up." "With everyone?" The question slipped out, sharper than she intended. Grant looked up, frowning. "What's that supposed to mean?" She hesitated. "You just seemed happy. Happier than you've been with me lately." He sighed, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Camille, don't do this. I'm tired, okay?" They finished the walk in silence, the tension thick between them. That night, Camille couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, remembering the way Grant had laughed with Sophie, the ease in his voice. Was it just friendship? Or was there something more? The next morning, Camille found herself replaying the evening over breakfast, the clatter of her spoon echoing in the empty kitchen. She thought of Lila's words, "Don't ignore your feelings." The doubt gnawed at her until she could bear it no longer. She waited until Grant was in the shower, then picked up his phone from the nightstand. Her hands shook as she scrolled through his messages, telling herself she was only looking for reassurance. What she found was a string of texts between Grant and Sophie, memes, work complaints, inside jokes. Mixed in were more personal notes. "Thanks for listening yesterday. You always know what to say," Grant had written. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Sophie's replies were kind, supportive, full of warmth. "You're doing great. Don't be so hard on yourself. I'm here if you need to talk." Camille's chest tightened, a wave of cold washing over her. It wasn't physical, not from what she could see, but it was intimate in a way that stung. When Grant emerged from the bathroom, towel draped over his shoulders, Camille sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. He froze, eyes darting from her to the phone. "Camille, what are you doing?" She steadied herself. "I saw your messages with Sophie." Grant's jaw clenched. He sat beside her, running a hand through his damp hair. "It's not what you think. Nothing happened. We're just friends." "Friends don't talk like that," Camille whispered. "You told her things you haven't told me. You've been confiding in her, about us, about your job, about how you feel." He looked down, guilt flickering across his face. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Things have been hard." And Sophie listens. "I didn't know how to talk to you anymore." Camille wiped her eyes, voice shaking but resolute. "I need honesty, Grant. I need to know if you're still here, with me, because it feels like you're not. He reached for her hand, his grip tentative. I want to be. I'm sorry, Camille. I know I've messed up. I just didn't know how to fix it. The silence between them was heavy, but for the first time in weeks, it felt like a beginning rather than an ending. Camille didn't have all the answers. She didn't know if trust could be rebuilt or if their marriage would ever feel the same. But she knew she deserved to be heard, to be chosen, to be loved. As she left for work, the city air felt different, brisk, charged with possibility and uncertainty. She texted Lila a single line. We finally talked. I'll tell you everything later. At her desk, she stared out the window at the endless sprawl of Manhattan, her reflection superimposed over the city skyline. She was scared, but she was also determined. Not to lose herself, not to settle for half-hearted love. If you're invested in Camille's journey and want to see how she faces what comes next, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. And let us know in the comments. Have you ever struggled to trust someone you love? What helped you find clarity? Your story might help someone else who's watching. The days that followed Camille and Grant's confrontation were heavy with unspoken words and cautious gestures. Mornings became quieter. They moved around each other in the kitchen, preparing coffee, packing lunches, like two dancers unsure of their next step. Camille noticed the way Grant avoided her eyes, how he lingered a little longer before leaving for work, as if bracing himself for the weight of their unresolved tension. Outside, Manhattan was alive with its usual energy. Yellow cabs honking, the distant wail of sirens, steam rising from grates. But inside their apartment, time seemed suspended. The air was thick with questions neither of them could quite voice. One evening, as rain streaked the window glass, Camille sat on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through her phone. She could hear Grant in the other room, his muffled voice as he wrapped up a call. She wanted to believe he was making an effort to keep things transparent, that the conversations he had now really were about work. But doubt had taken root, and it colored her every thought. When Grant emerged, he hesitated in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. Could we talk? He asked, his voice tentative. Camille nodded, setting her phone aside. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, searching his face for any sign of the man she married, the one who used to know exactly how to make her laugh, who once made her feel like the center of his world. Grant took a slow breath. I've been thinking about what you said, about how I've been distant. I'm sorry, Camille. I really am. I never wanted you to feel shut out or replaced. She listened, her heart pounding. She wanted to let herself believe him, but the memory of those messages with Sophie still stung. Why her, Grant? Why did you turn to Sophie instead of me? He stared into his mug. I guess I felt like I was failing you. Work's been overwhelming, and I didn't want to add my stress to yours. She's easy to talk to about the office stuff. She knows how things get. But I see now how wrong it was to confide in her about us, about our marriage. That should have been just between you and me. The honesty in his words softened something inside Camille, but it didn't erase the hurt. It's not just about talking, she said quietly. It's about trust. I need to know you choose me, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard, too. The rain outside intensified, drumming a steady rhythm that matched the thudding in her chest. Grant reached for her hand, his touch hesitant. I want to choose you, Camille. I know I haven't shown that lately, but I want to try. Can we try? Together? They sat in silence, hands entwined, letting the moment settle between them. For the first time in weeks, Camille felt a glimmer of hope. But she also knew that words alone couldn't mend what was broken. It would take time, effort, and a willingness to face the uncomfortable truths about their marriage. That night, they lay side by side in bed, not touching, but not turning away either. The city hummed beyond their window, a lullaby of possibility and doubt. The next day, Camille arrived at her office and found Lila waiting with 2 coffees and an expectant smile. They slipped into a quiet conference room, and Camille recounted everything, her confrontation with Grant, his apology, and the uncertain truce they'd reached. Lila listened intently, her expression softening. "You're brave, Cam," she said. "A lot of people would just bury this and hope it goes away. But you're fighting for your marriage. Just make sure you're fighting for yourself, too." Camille let the words sink in. She thought about everything she'd been through in the last few weeks. The anxiety, the self-doubt, the ache of betrayal. She realized she'd spent so much time worrying about losing Grant that she'd almost lost herself. That afternoon, as she strolled through a rain-slicked Bryant Park on her lunch break, Camille made a decision. She texted Grant, "Let's talk tonight. Really talk. No phones, no distractions." The sun was setting, painting the city in golden pink as Camille returned home. She found Grant already there, tidying up the kitchen. The apartment felt warmer, cozier, as if the space itself was rooting for them. They sat at the small dining table, the same spot where their anniversary dinner had grown cold. This time, there was no pretense, no carefully chosen words. Camille spoke first, her voice steady. "I need to know what you want, Grant. Not just for us, but for yourself. Are you happy? Do you want to fight for this?" Grant was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "I'm scared, Cam. I'm scared I've messed up too much. But I want this. I want you. I just don't know how to fix it." Camille reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "We can't fix it alone. Maybe we shouldn't try to." And so, for the first time, they talked openly about therapy. They researched options together, making appointments and agreeing to commit, not just to each other, but to the hard work ahead. It was awkward at first, admitting to a stranger all the cracks in their relationship, but they both recognized the need for outside guidance. Their therapist, Dr. Feldman, was patient and practical. She encouraged them to voice their fears, disappointments, and hopes. In the softly lit office uptown, Camille found herself saying things she'd never dared to admit, not just about Grant and Sophie, but about her own loneliness, her longing to feel seen and valued. Grant listened, sometimes silent, sometimes tearful. He apologized again, not just for forgetting their anniversary, but for letting their lives drift into parallel lines. Outside of therapy, they made small changes. Grant started coming home earlier, deliberately putting his phone away during dinner. They set aside time each week for just the two of them, cooking together, taking walks through Central Park, revisiting places that once held special meaning. It wasn't always easy. Old habits died hard, and some nights ended in frustration or silence. But each day, the distance between them lessened, if only by an inch. Camille, for her part, learned to speak up. She told Grant when she felt neglected, when the old doubts crept in. She also reminded herself daily that she was worthy of attention, of love that didn't have to be earned. There were setbacks. Once, Grant received a late-night text from Sophie, a work emergency, he claimed. Camille's chest tightened, memories flooding back. But instead of retreating, she confronted the feeling. "I need you to set boundaries," she told Grant. "Not just for me, but for us." Grant understood. The next day, he spoke to Sophie, clarifying their relationship was strictly professional going forward. He even invited Camille to visit his office, meeting his colleagues and seeing firsthand the world he'd kept separate for so long. Through these efforts, trust began to rebuild, not through grand gestures, but through everyday choices. One weekday evening, Camille found herself laughing at one of Grant's old jokes as they cooked dinner together. The sound surprised her. For the first time in a long while, it felt genuine. As spring arrived, the city shifted with it. Trees blooming in Central Park, laughter spilling from outdoor cafes. Grant suggested they celebrate their anniversary again, properly this time. He planned a simple picnic, just the two of them, beneath the cherry blossoms where they'd once had their first date. They reminisced, sharing memories and dreams for the future. Camille realized she was no longer holding her breath, waiting for the next disappointment. She was present, hopeful, and, most importantly, true to herself. The journey wasn't perfect, and neither were they. But together, they had chosen to rebuild, brick by brick. Camille looked at Grant, noticing the way he looked at her, really looked at her, and knew that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with her eyes open and her heart intact. If you've ever found yourself questioning the foundation of your relationship, or struggling to rebuild trust after it's been shaken, you're not alone. Let us know in the comments what helped you heal or reconnect. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more real-life stories of resilience and hope. Your experience might inspire or comfort someone else who's walking a similar path.